Welcome folks, my name is Tom Beatty. I'm the chair of the Web Design and Development program at Newmont College of Computer Science, and today we're going to do some JavaScript programming. Okay, today we're going to talk about for loops. Now, a for loop is designed to let you run a block of code multiple times. I'm going to start this off by saying for let I equal 0, I is less than 5, I plus plus, and then I'm going to have some curly braces. Now, let me explain what's going on here. So we have declared a variable I. You can use any variable name you want. You'll find in for loops I is fairly common. It stands for iterator because we're going to iterate through this code multiple times. And so the first time through, I equals 0. And it's going to keep running through this loop over and over until, well, so long as this condition is true, or I is less than 5 in this case. So long as I is less than 5, we keep running this loop. Now right now, I is starting out at 0, which is less than 5, so it's going to run. But then each time through, we also increase I by 1. That's what this I plus plus is. That's the same thing as saying I equals I plus 1. So the first time through, I is going to equal 0. Then when it completes the code inside the curly braces, I will equal 1. And then it will equal 2, 3, 4. But then as soon as I equals 5, it's not going to run the loop anymore because this condition is no longer true. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to just do a console log, and we'll do a console log of I. Since we know I is our iterator, it's changing. And so we should see this count up. So let's save that, run it here, and we see it starts out at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so it's counting up. And I could just as easily change that I and say hello. And I hit refresh. And now here it does something interesting, and this is Chrome doing this. It says hello, and it put a 5 here. When Chrome in the console gets the same output twice in a row, rather than writing hello twice, it counts how many times. So that way, if I were to say hello 1,000 times, it wouldn't just keep scrolling down my console. It just packs them all together and tells you how many times it printed. Now, if I really wanted hello to show up, I could go, or show up 5 times rather, I could go and use my backticks. Remember the backticks, that's the, it looks, I know, like an apostrophe or a single quote, but it's the key that shares, it's in the upper left-hand corner. It shares the same space as your tilde. It's to the left of your 1 key on your keyboard. If you use backticks, then you can do string templating. And so I can put in $sign and an open and close curly brace inside backticks and insert my I there. And then I'll put a period and a space just to make it look a little fancier. But that $sign with the curly braces, what that's saying when I've got backticks is take whatever variable I have and plug it in to this string. So I'll save it. And now it puts hello out 5 times. And the reason it's doing that is because the output is different each time. I've changed the number each time. So there's my basic for loop, but I can do a lot more than that. I could say for let I equal 4, I is greater than 0, I minus minus. So this is very similar, except here we're starting at 4, and it's going to run the loop so long as I is greater than 0, which it is if it equals 4. But now we're going to take 1 away, so it's going to count starting at 4 and count down until it ultimately reaches 0, and it'll stop. It won't run it when it equals 0. So it goes 4, 3, 2, 1. And if you want it to include 0, you could just do greater than or equal to 0. And sure enough, there it is. Okay. Can we do more? Of course we can. So let's go ahead and create an array. We'll create an array of people, and we'll add in Bob and Suzette and Harry and Sally and Fred. So we've got an array of people. The first address of the array is Bob, so that would be people 0, people 1, people 2, people 3, and people 4. So let's create a whole new for loop to use this. Let I equal 0, which that means it's going to start with Bob if we're referring to our addresses in people. And then I'm going to say, so long as I is less than people.length. And people.length is going to return the number of elements in the people array. And so if I added more names, it would automatically still work. So people.length, in this case, there are 5 different people, so people.length is going to be 5. But if I were to add another name, then it would change this to 6. I++, console.log, and I'm going to use my backticks again so that I can say hello, $ curly braces, people sub I, or people with curly brackets I. So it's going to go through and it's going to count, and the first time through I is going to equal 0, and people sub 0 would refer to this 0 element, which is Bob. And then Suzette and Harry, Sally, and Fred as it iterates through. And let's, I'm going to put an exclamation point at the end there and put a semicolon. And let's give this a try. And sure enough, we have hello Bob, hello Suzette, hello Harry, hello Sally, hello Fred. Now, when you use arrays, there are actually special versions of a for loop that you can use. So I'm going to say for x of people. And it knows that people is an array. And x, when it iterates through, x is going to be our value that each time through it's going to go through all of the elements in the array. And each time through it's going to put that value in x. So let's just do a console log of x. Hit refresh, and sure enough, it iterated through. And you know, I could always use the hello in backticks, but instead of using people I would just have to put in x if I'm using a for loop like this. Now, arrays also have their own version of for built in. It's built in as a method where I could do people.forEach. And for each is really useful. It works a little bit differently. You actually pass in a function. Let's see, we want that to look like that. There we go. So we're passing in this function as a parameter in our for each loop. And essentially, each element, each time through the loop, will be put into a variable named person. So I could console.log person, And you'll see I got my Bob, Suzette, Harry, Sally, Fred. Let's do something maybe slightly more interesting. I'll use some backticks here. And since I want to plug in the variable person, I got to use my $ curly braces in there. And we'll say goodbye person and put a period in there. And sure enough, goodbye Bob, goodbye Suzette, Harry, Sally, Fred. Now, one thing that's kind of neat about the for each is not only does it let you get the values of each element, but I can make it so it takes two different parameters. And since this is a function, if it has, we've talked about arrow functions in the past, if you have more than one parameter, you need to have parentheses around those parameters. And so I'm going to say person, comma, index. And when you have two parameters on a for each in the function that you pass in it, the first one is the value, the second one is actually the index number. So if I wanted to, I can go ahead and add my index in here. And it should put numbers that match up with the index for each one. So that's a for each. Now you might be wondering, okay, that's great. That's really useful if I'm working with arrays, but what if I'm working with a JavaScript object? So maybe I have let Bob, and Bob has a name which is Bob, and an age which is 21, and a species which is zombie. And so I've got this object. How can I iterate through that? Well, there are a couple of ways. One is to let's create a variable. We'll call it y. We used x before. I guess technically it's a bad habit here. I should have actually declared x before I used it. But I will not make that mistake here with y. So let's do for y in Bob. Notice it's in, not of. I've got my curly braces here. And I could console log y, and let's see what that gives me. And you'll notice it gave me name, age, and species. It did not give me Bob, 21, and zombie. So this is giving me the keys of these key value pairs. To get the values, I would just say Bob and put the key names inside square brackets. And now I'm getting Bob, 21, and zombie. Now another way to do this is with a console.log, where I can say object.keys, and in parentheses, put in Bob. And that created an array that has all the key names. But if you wanted the values, I'm going to paste this. I could say, give me the values. And first, we've got our keys, and then we've got our values. Notice these are arrays that it's returning here. What if you wanted both the keys and the values? You would say objects.entries for Bob. Oh, excuse me, object.entries. And it has returned an array of arrays. So This array has 3 elements. Each element contains a 2-element array. Name Bob, age 21, species zombie. So that's just another way to access all the data within these. So hopefully you see the value of for loops and various ways that you can use them. They're really powerful. They're used all the time, and you should definitely take some time, practice it, create some of your own for loops. Alright, if you like this video, please hit subscribe. Subscribe to my channel. I will provide more content in the future and keep it entertaining for you. Thanks a lot.